Welcome to Athletes, Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of Alumni Direct, where we've created a platform to help athletes and other alumni network and connect with each other and tap into various resources in health and finance and career. More importantly for this show, though, we talk to former college and professional athletes and talk about their journey and their transition out of sport, ultimately into successful business leadership and entrepreneurship. And the whole idea is to teach and inspire athletes that there is life after sports. There's such a major issue today, a lot of struggles between financial literacy, mental health, and just real excited today to have Ryan Schachtner. How you doing, Ryan?
Good, Rob. Hey, I appreciate you interviewing me, reaching out, and I'm excited.
Yeah, it's great. We're excited to have you as well. So Ryan was a baseball player, and he played at Cardinal Stritch in Milwaukee. And then once he got out of baseball, he got into finance and did some different things, and then wrote a book, which we was going to talk a little bit about, kind of geared in the NIL finance space. And then ultimately today, he has a business called Success Beyond Game Day. Ryan, let's talk about growing up playing sports. How did that shape you leading up into college?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, excelling in academics and gravitating towards that sort of thing, it gave me an outlet, and it really gave me a sense of hope for what I could do with my life. Because again, doing science and math and all those sort of things, they didn't really engage me. I wasn't really excited about doing that, but being able to play sports and connect with people and compete and all those sorts of things, it really gave me, again, a path to follow to experience success outside of that academic space.
Yeah, I mean, sports is so rewarding, and I mean, we all start at a young age, and go all the way through. And it definitely just the people along the way that you meet and just the activity that we'll talk more about, but we always talk about that athlete skill set, the DNA that kind of materializes from, when you're a youth going all the way up into college. When you went to college, and we talked about this a little offline, and I know from us being a little bit older, not that we're old, but older in terms of college years, was there any education about the ultimate transition out of sport?
No, I mean, so I had looked at going to a big SEC Division 1 and playing there, and ended up, just because I knew that in baseball, to get to the next level, you have to play and get experience and time, at bat and on the field. And my mindset was always, it's going to that next level and being drafted and that sort of thing. And that's when the coaches pitched you, right? When they were recruiting you, it was always, how are you going to get to that next level? How can we develop you as a baseball player, as an athlete? And there wasn't a whole lot of talk on, this is how we're going to help you understand and realize the skills that you're building, and then how to utilize them whenever your career is done. It was all develop that athlete mindset and grow and get better at your sport.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty prevalent, and especially depending on what the sport is. I mean, do you see in Division 2, Division 3, and I went to like a 1AA in football, but Division 1 another sport. But basically, do you see being at a smaller school that maybe the mindset is that, okay, well, the chances of maybe being a professional might be a little bit less. So kind of having a broader scope of like taking academics more seriously and knowing that it's going to end, even if you are fortunate to make it, it might be short-lived anyway.
Yeah, I think that is probably the mindset of the university as a whole. But I think when you're an athlete in that position, there's always that opportunity. And it may not be out of the big basketball or football, but more kids get drafted out of junior college for baseball than the NCAA. And so I think it depends on the sport. And especially now, it depends how you're leveraging that smaller campus, that sort of thing. With the transfer rules and all that, I mean, it's a good place. Some of those mid majors or D2, D3 is a good place to get some experience and playing time, and then transition as your skills get better. And so I think, from their mindset, it probably is. Athletes, I don't think, view it that way. You're
Right.
always trying to be better and get to that next level. But then it's also a resource standpoint. And I think it goes hand in hand with their mindset of, we're a D3 or a D2. We're not going to put people out there professionally as athletes. And we don't have resources coming in. So do we really need to spend money on that athlete development individual when these resources could be used and are needed in other places?
Yeah, I could see that, and I think it's and it's always like I would imagine from the school's perspective, like what's in it for now. I mean, they've got the games going on. They're focusing on the current athletes, which is understandable. But I think a lot, like I've had on some of these other podcasts talking to people just saying like, hey, I really wish that there would have been like a 6 week class or workshop on athlete transitioning out of sport, or even just, a mandatory class that they had to take, and they just weren't there. And I think it's the education is important. And even when you look at the alumni athlete, so okay, now you're done, it would be nice to know that there might be some education behind it. I mean, one thing that we at Alumni Direct have talked about doing is with our partners or resource partners is trying to develop additional curriculum that you might take to a school and say, okay, well, this is for not only your current athletes, but for your alumni athletes. We always say from like a recruiting perspective, you think it might make more sense, because if I'm a parent and I've got a high school athlete looking at different schools, and all things being equal and opportunities as far as playing time and all that, the school that's going to pay a little more attention to their athlete, not only as a current athlete at the school, but as alumni, I think would make more sense or more importance to them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. I think they're focused on one thing and they view themselves as one thing. And so the resources they don't feel are as important, and even mentorship, right? I mean, they're so focused on the short term. We need revenue. We need to provide this immediate stuff that they miss a lot of times the long-term benefit of being able to draw in alumni that had played there and to help those athletes and want to give back, because it's a longer burn, right? It's a longer term ROI on that type of stuff. And so, and their life is immediate, and they have fields to maintain, facilities to maintain, coaches to pay. And so it's that short term thinking, but that also gets them in some of the positions where they don't have long term resources and they don't have the connected alumni like they're looking for. So it's interesting. It's interesting dynamic for sure.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about networking, connecting, and obviously it's real important. Talk about the importance of doing, especially while you're still playing.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of the, I think you have to bring NIL into the conversation, because to me, that's one of the best aspects of NIL is it kind of took those restrictions off the athlete where you could connect to alumni, and now you don't really have to worry about the improper benefit, and you can actually go out there and build the relationship. But life is all about relationships. And as an athlete, you have your brand, but you're also able to leverage the brand of the university, the sport. And that's such a limited time frame that you have that to where it's relevant to people, right? You're on the field now. And so now you can leverage that. When you're, 10 years removed from that, it's really hard to go back and say,
Right.
and have it be any significance, and being able to leverage that. Yeah, I mean, you have to use it while you have it. And life is about relationships. I mean, I never put a resume together. I know that's a big service and most people do, but it's because I was introduced to somebody because of athletics. And it was the relationships that I built, the reputation that I carried forward, that I was put in rooms where I didn't necessarily belong from an academic or an experience standpoint, but I was put there because they knew who I was at the core and my work ethic and some of those sorts of characteristics, that they took a chance and they put me in rooms where I didn't belong. So yeah, and like I said, alumni want to give back, and
Right.
it's not always about donation, right? I mean, they get sick of being asked for money all the time,
Right.
and they want to do something that's more relevant and helps connect them and embed them even more inside the sport. I mean, as you mentioned, we're getting a little bit older, but part of the benefit of dealing with college athletes and all that is that you don't feel older, right? Mentally, you feel like you're still part of it. And so
Sure.
that's not just you and I, that's every former athlete that's out there. And so they're willing to share and mentor, and be engaged, and they want those sorts of opportunities.
Yeah, 100%. And I think uh, we're going to get more into alumni engagement in a minute, because that's something that's real important. But just to talk just a little more about networking, one thing that's been kind of interesting, I brought this up on a couple of recent podcasts, is that there seems to be it's very siloed as far as networking within sports, and there's different reasons that have come up as far as maybe practice times, season times, and all that. But a lot of what you see, especially like the football players, they tend to network with the football players, the basketball, baseball, and so on. But I think there's a real benefit to cross network, and one example I always give is I do a monthly networking event for my podcast guests, and it's really interesting to see because I've had football players, baseball players, NFL, Major League Baseball players. I've had water skiers. I've had MMA fighters. I've had wrestlers, soccer players, swimmers, all across the Olympians. And when we all get together and we talk about our businesses and we kind of roll up sleeves, how can we help each other? And you're tying into, as I always say, that athlete DNA, let's say, where you have that affinity relationship. I mean, we all started playing sports when we were young, probably a lot of different sports, especially when we were growing up. Maybe not so much now because people tend to specialize more, but still, you're playing different sports and you're growing up from age 5 on. So people understand what it takes to practicing the teams, the leadership, and everything else. So it makes sense to network together. So kind of give me your thoughts on that as far as the importance of it, but really how to do it and then like what you see in that area.
Yeah, I mean, I call it cross pollination, right?
Right.
And and I think it's set up a lot of times by the teams to protect their athletes. Like you have to be with your own, especially in football and basketball, because they're so popular that fans and all that kind of stuff. But the importance, because life is all about cross pollination, right? Once you get out of that college or pro environment, now you're forced to talk to other people. And so it's important for many reasons. One, who knows who you're going to connect with, right?
Yeah.
You could find a future spouse that's playing there, or you could find a future business partner, or you could just become friends with somebody that is a non-athlete or plays a different sport, that you never know how that relationship is going to benefit either of you down the line, right? Because we can't predict the future. And so the better relationships you have with a larger variety of people, the better off you personally are going to be. At the same time, I think athlete retention is an issue now because of transfer portal and all that. And
Yeah.
so the fact that we silo our athletes on purpose and they don't have relationships with alumni, with non-student athletes, with other student athletes not in their sport, the more relationships you have, the harder it is to make that decision to leave that university. And
Right.
so I think it would help with the athlete retention issue, and it's time. You're never going to get time. We all have the same hour. We have 168 hours in a week, and you either have to, going back to a previous point, use your platform while you have it to build as many of those relationships. I mean, Instagram may not be the best platform
Right.
to do that. You may have to get on LinkedIn, and it may not be even an alumni of your school, but it could be an alumni of your sport that you connect with. And because you did that reach out and built that relationship, you never know what's gonna come of that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking to one of my previous guests, and he talked about he's the CEO of a company, and he talked about his son was playing college lacrosse, and he encouraged his son's teammates like, hey, if you need a job, an internship for the summer, come. And so it's utilizing this relationships. We always talk about too is that, I mean, even when you're in high school, I mean, your friends, your fellow teammates, and all that, you just never know, like you said, where they're going to be, who their parents are, who the coaches are. So we highly recommend, just being open and tapping into that networking, and don't be afraid of it. I mean, you never know where people might think, oh, I'm young, what can I offer? But maybe it's offering somebody the help with one of their kids or something like that. You just don't know. So let's talk about alumni engagement, and you kind of touched on a few times here. Talk about like when you were at school, or maybe even now, was there a push to bring back the athletes, and not just for the homecoming game or the golf tournament, but to truly mentor and work with the athletes?
There was nothing like that. I mean, it was the homecoming game. We didn't have football it was just basketball was the main sport, and it was the
Okay.
homecoming game, and that was it. And but we were also a smaller school, so we did a lot of cross pollination on purpose. Like my
Right.
roommate was a basketball player, and so because we were smaller, we could get away with some of that. We didn't realize at the time that it was going to benefit
Right.
us, but it was just like, hey, this guy's cool, let's share an apartment or whatever. And so, but there wasn't really an emphasis on it, and what a huge opportunity missed. And I think sometimes it's in athletics, you have the academic side, and then you have the athletic department, and each one says I'm more important, or
Yeah.
and there's this battle, right, this
Right.
internal battle. And so maybe some of the ideas that don't come to fruition because ego gets in the way, and that sort of thing. But I think if you look at the universities that kind of drop that ego, and they realize that we're interdependent. One does good, the other does good, and they can formulate a strategy like you see, like a Clemson in their football program. I mean, they do a phenomenal job of bringing back former football players, keeping them part of the family, building. It's a true
Right.
family, and you didn't have to be the star; you just had to be on
Right.
the team, and they will help you. So you look at programs inside of universities that understand that it's important, and they put an emphasis on it. But across the board, no, we didn't have it. Very few of my friends, especially at that point in the early 2000s, it wasn't a priority, I don't think.
Do you see it at all now? I mean, do they ever reach out to you now, or reach out to alumni, or
Uh,
other
for
than
money,
the financial
for money,
donations? But yeah,
yeah,
no,
for money. That's the
that's
thing.
kind of going the rate. Yeah, and honestly, I mean, schools need to raise money. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, there's a way to do it. We like to look at it as a friend raising approach, and if you have a positive experience, you're more likely to get back. And I think even from a mentoring perspective, like I've talked to one athlete was telling me that their school brings back the alumni to mentor, but it's not specific. It doesn't have to be specific to that sport. So I could have been a football player, but I come back and I'm working with the swimmers and the wrestlers too. And that, I think that's important too, because as an alumni, and now you're could be a CEO of a business or whatever it might be. It doesn't really matter what sport you played. And if you, as
Yeah.
an alumni, if you can bring that back across the different sports, I think it's great. So I always like to ask this question. These are my fun questions. So I don't know if you had a chance to prep yourself for if you watched or listened to any of my previous episodes. But the first question is in 10 words or less, if you can go back in time, what advice would you give to freshman Ryan in college?
I could probably do it in less. I would say think bigger, and who cares what others think.
There you go. He did the 10 words or less. And then if you were to fast forward to senior Ryan, like what advice would you give?
I'd same thing. Think bigger, and who cares what others think.
All
I
right,
think it's
he's
something that
sticking to it, folks.
we struggle with it, right? I mean, we put too much value in other people's opinions, and they come with their own set of beliefs and limitations. And just because somebody in my circle doesn't think it can happen doesn't mean it can't happen, right?
Right.
It's just that believe in yourself. You're capable of doing more. And most people plan, and they think about it, and they do all these sorts of things, and they never take action. And when you look at, because they have to be ready, they're so busy getting
Right.
ready that they never go out and do that thing. And it doesn't matter. The most successful people in the world that we all look up to, whether it's athletically or just in business, they face those same doubts, but they just did it and figured it out along the way. And I think
Right.
that's kind of what life is. So it's think bigger, and just go for it. You've got to be your own biggest fan. You can't let other people distract you and sway your opinion.
Okay, so let's talk about NIL. So obviously there's so much going on in that space now, but I want to cover it briefly, but kind of get your thoughts on the positive and negative. Maybe talk a little about what you wrote in your book, and you were telling me how the timing kind of worked out well.
Yeah, I think the narrative on NIL that we hear in the media is we're paying for athletes, and yes, some of that goes on, right? I think it's a very small percentage of the total NIL deals, but it's tends to be the largest amount of money, so it gets a lot of attention. And I would just say kids were getting paid before NIL was legal.
Right.
We just didn't know about it. And so,
Yeah.
would you rather know about it or not know about it? And that's just a question I leave on that side of it. But I think what an opportunity, even at the high school level, to draw kids back into education, to do something that's relevant. They can go out and test it immediately, And wow, it covers so many different aspects of what you're going to be doing later on in life. It's going to be sales. It's going to be legal and reading contracts. It's going to be marketing. It's going to be finance and managing those sorts of things. It's going to be how do you scale up and how do you build a business? Do you need employees? You're going to start to have to think strategically and all these sorts of things that are embedded in what the spirit of NIL is. That, wow, what an opportunity, right? You try, you fail, you try something else. It's what life is all about. And I think if we collectively as a society viewed it as that opportunity, it could really become, it could get kids out of situations, right? They may not ever play pro, but it could help them build and connect and build relationships with people. And just, man, what an opportunity. And don't get swayed by the media. The biggest issue, in my opinion, with NIL is the tampering. And that's where you get someone that's in season and someone is, I always joke, is an Amazon driver during the day and a star sports agent at night that reaches out to these kids in season and tells them that they can get them more money.
Right.
That's the problem, right? And so the education to the athletes on, you got to investigate these people, but you don't let what could be a huge win for education, don't get swayed into they're just paying these guys. They always work.
Yeah, and I love your perspective on that, just the importance of the education side of things. I think it is. I mean, most people, to your point, they're thinking about the big dollars, they're thinking about the portal, but there's so much more to NIL, and just having that opportunity to become that entrepreneur at such a young age, and just the relationships and all that you're going to meet along the way, I think is great. So let's talk about transition out of sport. Talk a little about your transition. You played baseball your whole life and other sports, but now all of a sudden your baseball career's over and you're going into the real world, so to speak.
Yeah. And so my baseball career ended the last game of my freshman year because I completely blew out my shoulder. And so everything that I had kind of hinged success on was baseball. And now all of a sudden that was taken away. The surgery and all that. I have range of motion, but I couldn't physically get back to where I was. And mentally, that just took a toll on me. And so real quick, I had to figure out, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And gravitated towards that finance sort of role. I think like a lot of athletes, they get done with their sport and they go into, insurance and investments because they, have networks and all that. But academically, I wasn't that strong. And so this is where the relationship piece first came in. Is I had a relationship and they vouched for me, and I got an internship that academically I was not qualified for. But because of my reputation and how hard I worked, they took a chance on me and someone vouched for me. Right. And so I got in that internship and I was number one intern, top in that class. And that just gave me an opportunity to be competitive, but also understand that work ethic a lot of times trumps knowledge and academic success, especially when you get out into the real world. And so I took that internship, turned it into a 25-year career in finance, where I, grew a firm to 5 states, 60 plus advisors, largely working with professional athletes and business owners.
No, that's great, and it just shows you. I mean, you just never know when your career is going to end, whether it's an injury, whether it's just the end of your college, or if you are fortunate to go professional, and then however long that career might be. So maybe give like a couple words of advice to athletes as they come upon that, whether the transition out of sport, whether it's injury or just being done with their career.
Yeah, I think mine was injury, but I think you go through the same emotions of it, right? One day your identity has been built as this athlete. For me, baseball, but it could be football, basketball, whatever. And one day you have your number, and then the next day somebody else is wearing your number. And it's almost like you're forced into reality instantaneously. And it can be really tough. And so just understand that mentally it's going to be challenging regardless, right? And so, again, going back to NIL, you have an opportunity to start building the you outside of the sport earlier and building relationships and connecting and trying different things. And again, that's the benefit of that component to it. but you're going to face that. And this is where your network comes into play, because we've all been there. We've all fought through it. And this is where you can rely on other people for advice, for help, and that sort of thing. But you've got skills that you inherently had, but you developed through athletics, that is going to help you, to be just successful in life in general. And it's being able to narrow in on what those skills are and be able then to articulate them to create opportunities for yourself. And you're positioned better than most 4.0 students. You just have to start believing.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. That's why I always like it when I go back and listen to the episode. Just the advice that the athletes give are great. So let's talk about what you're doing today and talk about your business and some of the great things that you're doing in working and helping athletes.
Yeah, for sure. We developed tools to help really narrow down. We started in that athlete development, how do you transition space, but the tools that we built out apply in so many different areas of athletics. And so we built a assessment that takes 10 minutes, that's over 92% accurate, that helps identify those specific things, 27 specific characteristics that you are either strong in or weak in, that you utilize through athletics. You built them through athletics and honed them, but they also apply to life after sports. So are you strategic thinking? Can you focus in high stress, high pressure environments? Can you adapt quickly and maintain performance? What type of a teammate? All these sorts of things that that you already have to some measure, so that you can identify and articulate those, whether it's in a job interview like the NFL combine guys, that we help identify those, and when they go out and interview for NFL teams, or just an athlete transitioning to, their first job. How do you separate yourself, down to the mental performance aspect, to even the recruiting side with coaches? How do you build and define your culture and then measure who you're getting in, so that you can have a more cohesive culture? You're bringing in the right people, not just the right skill sets, so that you can win more, you can have more fun, you can do all these sorts of things to really enhance, from a coach, their career, but also the athlete's experience. How do you mentor but have guided mentorship? We've got tools that help with that. So it's really, we work in that elite high school, the college, and then the pro space. But the aspect that we do that's younger than that is teaching kids. And we have a whole production company that we did the Arizona Bowl with the Snoop Dogg. We just got that contract renewed. And so we'll be doing that again. But from a STEM perspective, you may not be the person on the field playing, but could you grow the grass? Could you be the announcer? And how do you learn what those different opportunities are and get to experience those, and then relate those back to the classes that you're taking right now? And so that you can have a plan, you can have some hope. And so we kind of cover all different aspects of life just a little bit differently, with the athletes.
Oh, that's awesome. That sounds like a great program. So how is it something that's in your particular region, or is it something that's just national? How do people
Yeah, we're even international. So yeah, Success Beyond Game Day. You can DM me, and my stuff is at Twitter, or I guess X, and then Instagram is Ryan SBGD. You can hit me up there. But yeah, I mean, we're international. We work with teams. The one-on-one we do tends to be with our professional athletes on mental performance. But we work with, again, that elite high school. And by elite, I mean, you're going to go play D1 somewhere, right? Or you have that opportunity. And so we work with those all the way to the colleges and helping recruit, coaches recruit and then develop those athletes, because we're all different. So understanding how to work with each athlete to maximize their talent is a big thing. And then how do you also use these tools to develop that athlete uniquely, so that you retain them, but also they become that success? How do you set up guided mentorship with the right person, and all those sorts of things? So, but yeah, I mean, those are the areas we work, and we're international. So.
And so, or is it mostly, I guess, online, or is it? Well, I mean, I know you talk about the events, but like separate of the events, like when you're working with the athletes, is it online or is it something in person? How does that work?
It's both, right? So it can be both. It can be all online. It can be all in person. Obviously, cost, varies between those. A lot of times it's a combination, and it just depends what region. So we have people all across the country that, it's not like you're flying me in from Charlotte, North Carolina to, Hawaii to do something. I mean, we've got people across the country
Right.
that are able to execute at an extremely high level, all former athletes that have been through it, understand it. But yeah, a lot of it's online. It depends on what kind of aspect that we're working with a team, or again at the pro level with that individual one on one.
That's great. It sounds like a wonderful program, and I know you were talking offline about the whole program at the Arizona Bowl. That was pretty cool. So you mentioned you mentioned like how people can find you, but so the what's the website again?
It's successbeyondgameday.com.
Okay, perfect. All right, and then obviously you can look Ryan up like he gave you those other things. You look him up on LinkedIn, and you can find us at alumnidirect.com, and the podcast is on our YouTube channel as well as across all the different podcast networks, Spotify and Apple. It's such every week I kind of close this out. We want to make an impact. I always say at least on one athlete. Obviously, we want to impact a lot more because it's such an issue with athletes transition out of sport. But each week, the advice and the stories that I hear from my guest. It's just been great, and we really want people to follow it and listen to it each week and watch it and just again make an impact. So Ryan, thank you so much again for your time today.
Yeah, Rob, I appreciate the opportunity. It was good. It was good connecting and sharing some of my stories.
Yeah, for sure. It was my pleasure.